Hi, my name is Alison Pulker and I'm a food researcher at the African Centre for Cities. In this video, I'll be speaking about some of the emerging approaches to addressing urban food insecurity that focus on strategic and long-term methods. I will use a range of examples from cities where they have adopted strategic long-term approaches in relation to food. From urban agriculture policies to specific spatial and land use planning interventions, city officials are beginning to understand the opportunities that cities present to address urban food and nutrition insecurity in new and imaginative ways. Throughout this course, we've discussed how food can be incorporated into urban planning practices in African cities, but also that food in cities poses a unique and complex challenge that cannot be addressed by planning interventions alone. We've also learned that the plans we make today will impact the development trajectories of our cities for many years. So, how can we work with planners, policymakers, and city officials to intervene in strategic ways that enable more just and equitable food systems, and where all people, at all times, have access to affordable, safe, nutritious food, not just for today, but for generations to come? But first, what do we mean when we refer to strategic and long-term approaches? And what would this mean in relation to food planning and policies? In the context of urban planning, a strategic long-term approach refers to a comprehensive and forward-looking plan for the development and management of a city or urban area over a period of years or decades. This type of approach takes into account the many complex and interconnected factors that affect urban development, such as population growth, history, economic trends, transportation, land use, patterns, environmental concerns, and social equity. Underpinning this type of approach is a need for collaborative, multi-stakeholder engagement to work towards a clear vision. This shared vision is then filtered through each level of the strategic plan, from inception to development, implementation to evaluation. By taking a strategic long-term approach to urban planning, we are able to build more sustainable and resilient cities. But what does this mean in the context of urban food access, planning, and governance? As we have covered in other sections of this course, planners have for many years believed that they did not have a role to play in enabling access to food in cities. However, as Pothekuchi argues, inaction in the planning environment does not have neutral consequences, but often generates negative outcomes. So, as has been made clear throughout this course, local governments and planners have a food mandate. There is also a need for urban planning, a profession with a history of long-term strategic planning processes, to rise to this challenge. But how do strategic and long-term approaches relate to food access? A strategic approach to food planning can be greatly supported through the development and adoption of an urban food strategy. Anna Moguez-Fau and colleagues define an urban food strategy as a process consisting of how a city envisions change in its food system and how it strives towards this change. Urban food strategies aim to place food on the urban agenda, capitalizing on efforts made by existing actors and creating synergistic effects by linking different stakeholder groups. Written milestones in this process can be charters, action plans, or full strategies. Ideally, urban food strategies take a holistic approach to the food system of a city, considering horizontal and vertical dimensions. So urban food strategies are perhaps an end goal for many cities, and it might be necessary for some cities to first start with a more modest document, such as a food charter. This charter could set out the agreed-upon aims and principles of an envisioned urban food system, relevant to a city's specific needs. But while this is one approach, there are many others. It is important to remember that what worked in one city might not be easily transferable to a different context. One way to find out which approach might work best for your city is to learn from cases and examples of how other cities in Africa and around the world are enacting these types of strategic approaches. In some cities, this approach has taken the form of food policy councils. In Antananarivo in Madagascar and Lusaka in Zambia, food policy councils have been established as a way to include a broader range of multiple stakeholders. Food policy councils have been particularly popular in North America, but less so in southern cities. While these food policy councils can allow for much needed civil society engagement in food systems planning and decision-making processes, there are concerns around the power relations and politics at play within these councils, as well as whether or not these councils are enabled to contest the existing dominant powers within the sector. Understanding these power dynamics are important if a city opts to form a food policy council. Another popular example is that of the city of Belo Horizonte in Brazil, which adopted a food policy and supply secretariat within their municipal government. The work of this secretariat spanned 20 programs, which were designed to increase access to healthy food for all residents. Some of the programs included food bank assistance, market regulation to provide low-cost food through specific vegetable markets, and the promotion of family-based urban agricultural processes. In another city in Brazil, the city of Curitiba has developed a municipal plan for food security and nutrition. This plan is informed by various local issues and adopts a participatory approach to understanding what it will take to develop potential interventions to address these challenges. The municipality also runs 2 programs, which ensures that residents across the city are able to buy fresh fruit and vegetables at a fixed price per kilo. These prices are often 40 to even 45% lower than the retail prices and support low-income neighborhoods in particular. By intervening in these specific markets, the city of Curitiba has created a price-regulating effect, making fresh fruits and vegetables more affordable citywide. In Baltimore, in the United States, the city has incorporated a food policy and planning division into their existing urban planning department. Through evidence-based planning and data analysis, the city aims to be responsive to when laws, planning documents, and other policies are up for revision, in order to strategically embed food into these revised policies. And a similar approach has also been adopted by the city of Cape Town through the Resilience Department, where a food lens has been strategically applied to various relevant policy documents, including the Metropolitan Spatial Development Framework, which sets out the city's development agenda for the next 10 years. While these are only a few examples that differ in certain ways, there is also some clear continuity between these approaches. We can see that in order to adopt a form of long-term strategic planning, there are a few basic principles that should underpin this approach. These include multi-stakeholder and multi-sectoral engagement and partnerships, community participation and community-led interventions, a clear understanding of the power dynamics involved in the city's existing governance structures, and particularly in African cities, it is essential to engage both the formal and formal economies which operate in the urban food system. Ultimately, what these examples highlight is the need for a food-sensitive or food-aware approach to our planning and governance practices. By keeping food at the forefront of our policy and planning decisions, we can work towards creating more just and equitable urban food systems. While engaging urban planners and urban planning systems is necessary, it is also not sufficient. This means that in a strategic long-term plan, a whole-of-government approach is necessary, given the interconnected and complex nature of both the urban and food systems. But this change is unlikely to happen overnight. But we should feel encouraged by the number of cities around the world, and specifically in the Global South, that are beginning to adopt strategic, long-term food-aware planning approaches to enable greater access to the urban food system. It is clear that slowly but surely, cities are beginning to radically take urban food systems seriously. This shift to more food-aware or food-sensitive policy and planning interventions will not only enable urban residents improved access to food and nutrition security, but will also allow these residents to achieve greater health and well-being more generally in our cities.